This is Unit 1, Level 2, Exponents. Exponents show repeated multiplication. So I'm going to give you an exponent here, 5 to the third power. In this exponent, 5 to the third power, the 5 is what we call the base. It's the number that you're going to be multiplying. The 3, which is the exponent, tells us how many times we're going to be multiplying that number. So in this case, we're going to take that number 5 and we're going to multiply it 3 times. Now, that does not mean 5 times 3. Instead, what that means is I'm going to take the number 5, 1, 2, 3 times. 5 times 5 times 5. When I take 5 times 5, I get 25. 25 times 5 is going to be 125. So 5 to the third power is 125. Again, an exponent just shows the base to the third power, to the power here, tells us how many times we're going to multiply it. So I always put those lines there, kind of helps me. 1, 2, 3, and then I know I'm taking the base and putting it in there, and then of course it shows repeated multiplication. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can show this. A couple of different forms. We talked about word forms before, or number forms before. The first is exponential form. 5 to the third power is the exponential form for this particular problem. Word form would be writing that out. 5 to the third power. Expanded form would be what we have up here, where we've actually multiplied it out. 5 times 5 times 5. And then the standard form, of course, is going to be our answer, 125. So we have the exponential form, the word form, the expanded form, and then our standard form. Now, you might be asking yourself, what happens if we have a 0 or a 1 as the exponent? These are some different situations or scenarios that you might encounter. So I'm going to go over those really quickly. Anytime you have a number raised to the first power, the exponent is 1, it's going to be simply that number. Think about it. You're taking 10 one time. So it's just going to be the number 10. Anytime you have a number raised to the 0 power, that's always going to be equal to 1. So anytime you have the 0 power, it's going to be equal to 1. Now, there are a couple of exponents that we need to talk about that have some different names. The exponent that we talked about earlier, 5 to the third power, has another name. It can also be called 5 cubed. If I took that 5 to the second power, I could also call that squared, 5 squared. So those are just a couple of scenarios that you might run into with exponents. We're really going to see exponents here in the next lesson when we talk about powers of 10.